this evolution. It's not the fact that we have far-right parties that are coming now more and more supported in the society. The problem is not the rise of the far-right parties. The problem is the normalization of the discourse. And I was referring to this. We had a discussion with students and professors this afternoon. And really, this is a very central thing. We had surveys, for example, in the UK and in France. When you were having a statement coming from the far-right party, the Front National, when the Front National was quoted, 23%. Without the Front National, the same statement, 73% of the people were supporting the statement. So the substance of the discourse is supported. When it's connected to the bad party, is rejected. But the substance is here. We had exactly the same with the British National Party. This is something which is quite important. So the rhetoric of this polarizing discourse, this populism is everywhere. So in Europe, we didn't like so much the Bush administration, as you were not so happy with it. But at the end of the day, the rhetoric was not only in the States. The narrative of this polarization is and was, during the last years, almost everywhere, and this was working. This was working and attracting voters and people. And this has an impact on the way we deal with human rights. Why? Because out of this discourse and this instrumentalization, populism, polarization, fears, we build something which is an idea of us. Who is this us we are talking about? And you know, human rights is not only a question of law. It has to do with psychology. It has to do with the fact that you acknowledge the fact that the other could be one of you in, for example, human dignity, human brotherhood. It's part of humanity. If the whole discourse is us versus them, we are not the same, we don't share the same values, at one point this could be used to promote human rights for yourself and to forget human rights for the others. And it happened. And we'll see how it happened, because it happened in our societies where we have this discussion about who is this we are talking about when it comes, for example, to equal rights and equal dignity. So this vision of us, even in the West, and this discourse had an impact in the way we were talking about rights and equal rights and protecting the rights of all the people. Let me give you an example first, something which is quite clear. Throughout the Western countries, but once again, this could be also tackled in other countries, but I will just focus now on the Western country. And the way states could play with this and sometimes undermine our commitment towards human rights and make it very difficult to be quite consistent, is all this discussion that we have in our discussion on human rights in tackling racism, for example. There is clearly today something which is a new kind of racism, targeting and stigmatizing, for example, Muslims, and this is also a reality. So this perception that Islam is a foreign religion, that Muslims are the other, and this discourse that we have is something that we need also to tackle as something which has to do with human rights, and by saying that any kind of racism is unacceptable, and this new racism is something which is touching now, and it is a reality. So we call it Islamophobia. Some, for example, in Europe don't like Islamophobia, and they prefer us to speak about racism against Muslims. Whatever it is, the fact that in certain situations, certain circumstances, you are targeted because of the only fact that you are Muslim, this is racism. This has to do with targeting people for who they are and not for what they are doing. And then this is something which is happening. This construction that there is an us versus them and that they are Muslims and nurturing this is something which is happening now, crossing the boards, and we have it. And in all the societies, and Canada, for example, is not protected from this reality of a new kind of racism. So this discussion here, this polarization in the discourse is not protecting us. Quite the opposite. When the people are saying, no, in fact, we are not criticizing you because you are Muslims, we are criticizing your religion, we have to distinguish. To be critical towards a religion or towards, teachings and lessons, this is the critical discussion that we may have. No problem with this. A critical discussion on any religion, on any philosophy, that's open. But when it comes to criticizing and start stigmatizing people because they are who they are, and promoting discriminations in the name of this, or without naming it, in fact, having this kind of discrimination is something which is unacceptable. So it has here to do with a clear understanding of what we are promoting when it comes to human rights. And human rights means no to any kind of racism. And this is today as if when it comes to a kind of discrimination towards some people is less important because of the global atmosphere, the overall atmosphere is more acceptable than others. So this is something that it's not acceptable. And here we are witnessing things that are said about Muslims today, which were said about the Jews during the 30s. When it comes to, the double loyalty, the double tongue, the fact that there is an international network of people being the fifth column entering. So you are nurturing an atmosphere of mistrust. And when there is mistrust and someone is treated in a way which is discriminatory, you tend to accept it because the overall mistrust makes you accept the fact that it could be some distortion to the equal treatment. And if you look at what is happening now in our societies, this is the reality. This is a problem that we are facing. The second is about, so here we also have to talk about free speech, for example. And here, you had this discussion in Denmark with the cartoon crisis. Critical, free speech, to be critical to just even the cartoons, these are things that the Muslims should understand are part of the culture, so they have to take an intellectual critical distance. To ask for laws to ban all this is not going to make it. We cannot just go for more laws against freedom of speech. The problem is not here about acting for this, and I think that if you listen to the European and even the Western Islamic discourse on this, it was quite wise, not asking for laws and saying, look, we don't like it, do it if you want, but we don't like it, we're not asking for laws to prevent you from doing it. The point here is something which is important in, okay, it's legally possible to do it. Is it right, ethically, to do it? The point is, it's legally possible, but in the name of our common sensitivity and decency, do you have to do it because it's legally possible? It could be legal and silly. It's legally silly, but do it. The point here for us is to say, at one point, if you have a political discourse nurturing the us versus them, at one point, one us is going to push the freedom of speech to go as far as possible to know them, what they are going to support, or to bear or accept. And it's not us together creating a common sensitivity, it's a kind of competition within the limits of the law. And this could lead to something which is very, very bad, very, very counterproductive. The second point, so freedom of speech and the way we talk about it, sometimes it has to do with a sense of common sensitivity and decency that we are sharing, much more than you can do it, it's legal and not legal. So it's also part of human rights when it comes to my own sensitivity. The second point is about neutrality and visibility. And mainly in our societies now, there is a new visibility. The new visibility of citizens, Muslim citizens, they are more visible. And here, we are challenged in our conception or our understanding of what is neutral. Very often we tend to think that what is neutral, what is normal, it's the dominant culture.